How important is it to you, diversity of mindset?
Adam, it is important that when you are looking at an organization and you are trying to solve for D&I, that you are checking D&I at every value point in the organization. So what's the issue with your position? I don't see an issue in your position. If I have a black and white candidate and the white candidate is better,
You,
all things equal, I don't see any issue in that. Do people that you talk to have an issue with that?
no, the
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast where I bring in the best and the brightest in the world of business, marketing, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity and drive your career forward. Folks, I've been waiting to have this guest on for a while. I've seen this dude speak on stages. We've hung out, conferences, events. He is the man. Torin Ellis is a human capital strategist who leads a progressive consulting boutique with laser focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging. A lot of people leave off that B, and not for savings, but we'll get back to what that B really means, what belonging is all about, and risk mitigation. He embraces a collaborative approach built on transparency, actionable strategy, rigorous performance monitoring. Is the reason why some of the world's most forward-thinking companies have trusted him to make DEIB a promising, not punitive, in their workforce. So we're going to get to it. We're going to unpack his story, his journey, and the message that he wants to spread to the world. Torin Ellis, welcome to the podcast, man.
The podcast. I love that. Thank you so much for, grabbing that point, emphasizing the last line, promising and not punitive. So many individuals feel like when we are talking about things that are critical, when we are talking about things that hold people accountable, that it has to be a punitive conversation. And I firmly believe that it can be one of promise, it can be one of beauty. And I'm happy that you and I are having it on today.
Yeah, man, it's been a while, and here is how the connection went down. We were at Transform. I'm in a happy hour. I see this dude walking across the lobby of the Wynn Hotel, and I think I literally yelled across the casino at you. I'm like, dude, when are you coming on the show? He's like, well, when are you inviting me?
That's
I'm like,
right.
well, I'm doing it right now, and that Unleash was fun. Were you? Transform was fun. Were you out at Unleash last week?
No, I was not.
Yeah, I skipped that one
I
too.
was in court because if you look at my
Uh-oh.
background, you see that my walls and stuff are not done. I had a contractor to run out on me. So I went to court last week. And unfortunately, I still have not gotten to the resolve that I'm looking for. But no Unleash
No,
for me.
you think the threat of court would get people to move their ass, but it doesn't. So let's get to it too. And listen, anyone could go. They could go to your LinkedIn. They could go to your website, which we'll link up later, and learn a lot more about you. But I love to really understand this. If you don't mind sharing, let's hit that rewind button. Let's hit the "This Is Your Life," Torin Ellis. What I'm always curious. What did your parents do for a living?
Oh, wow. You're going to go there. Okay.
Yeah, I am going to go there because I think it really sets a found. Like, just for example, while you're thinking about that for a second there, my parents are both retired New York City Board of Education teachers, 30, 40 years in the system. My brother is a guidance counselor, and I'm the furthest thing from any of that.
You
So
got
it's
it.
always interesting to see how people, where their influences come from. How did they move and groove into the place that they're in now?
Yeah, so part of that connection point is shared here. My mom was an educator, has been an educator her entire life. I always say to people, I don't say it as much today as I used to, but I had two parents that loved me. I didn't come from a broken home. I had a mother who worked extremely, extremely hard. So, as an educator in the day, she would work and do some part time jobs in the evening to make sure that she had complementary income to what she and my father were
Hmm.
making. My father worked for Sears and Roebuck. And so we grew up and moved around the Midwest. Every time, Adam, that we moved, we were moving because he was receiving a promotion. So mom's career was stable education, grabbing a new school in what city we
Right.
were in. Father was
And
climbing that corporate ladder inside of Sears and Roebuck. And a fun fact, Sears and Roebuck got started because of the lack of access for Black and brown families in retail stores years
that's
and years and years ago.
Yeah, let's talk on that for a little bit too. What was it like for you to, I talk to a lot of folks who are military kids and they're traveling around base to base, but I really haven't been able to dive into a conversation around folks that have moved because their parents are business. What was that like for you? So you're 56, you got about 12, 11 years on me. So we're talking, you were in elementary school and early 70. Like what was that like moving around the country back then? Like going
Yeah,
from, was that hard for you, man? Or were you extroverted, able to adjust and acclimate into schools?
yeah. I don't even know if it's fair for me to say extroverted because today I say I'm more of an introvert. I love being quiet and in an observation type capacity.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't use that word. I would say that we
Fair.
just simply adapted. We started in Florida where I was born, South Florida, Hollywood. And when the
Love
note
it.
came around and said it's time for you all to move, I mean I'm three, so I don't really have much say in the equation,
Nope.
and I never really had much say in the equation. What I will tell you is that every city that we went to, we found a way to get into a nice community. We found a way. My parents found a way to put me into what they felt was going to be a safe and rewarding educational experience.
Hmm.
I actually found a way to act out, even though I had two incredible parents that loved me, a mom who was an educator. I got to a point in life where in junior high school, I wanted to fill my oats, as they would say. I would challenge some of my instructors, Torin, be quiet. Oh, you be quiet. I'm talking
Uh-oh.
to the teacher in this particular way. And it's not something that I'm necessarily proud of. It really was that moment of trying to show that I fit in with the wrong side of the classroom. So,
The
so,
rebellious side.
so what I will tell you is that no matter what city we were in, I found myself able to make some things happen. It was the last city though, Adam.
Which one was that?
Davenport, Iowa. So I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, Fort Wayne, Indiana,
Mm.
and then Davenport, Iowa for my formative years. It was the last city, Adam, where I experienced my first memorable racist encounter. I
I
had
want
a
to,
newspaper route. And,
yeah.
and back then, you had to collect the money for the
Mm.
newspapers. Back then, you had to deliver those newspapers rain, sleet, snow,
Yeah, you like the
or shine.
mailman.
Absolutely. And so I knocked on the door. I'll never forget. I knocked on Mr. Quinn's door, and Mr. Quinn came to the door with a shotgun. And he opened the door. He cocked the shotgun,
Mhm.
and he said the N word. If you
Mm.
ever step in my yard again, I'm going to shoot you.
What did you feel at that moment?
Fear, angry. Because I will tell you, even in Davenport, Iowa, corn detasseling, not a whole lot of representation in the
Mhm.
city overall. I never felt like I didn't belong. I could go to the community, the county fair, I
Right.
think it was called. Never
You felt
felt like I
safe?
didn't belong. I could go to the mall where the young people hung out all weekend,
No problem.
pizza store where I worked, Baskin Robbins where I worked. Like,
Nothing.
I mean, you think about how cool I am now,
Yeah.
and I'm scooping ice cream in high school. I got on a pink polo Baskin Robbins shirt,
We're gonna
scooping
have to we're
ice
gonna have to
cream.
find a picture of that.
Kind of hard to be cool, but I never felt like I was out of place or in a place where I wasn't wanted. And when that experience happened, I said, so this is some of what I've been learning and hearing about. And the last thing that I'll say about that, Adam, is my father, to this day, my father passed away on Father's Day in 2009, literally,
Mm.
not figuratively, literally on Father's Day,
Oof.
2009. My father never knew that man up the street used the N word to refer to me.
What do you think you would have done?
It could have been problematic because
So it
my
was a
father
conscious
was,
choice for you not to tell him.
yeah, my father was a no nonsense
No.
individual. He was no nonsense in how he raised myself and my sisters. He was no nonsense with the people in the church. He was no nonsense with the people at work. He wasn't a bully, but my father was no nonsense. And so I chose not to tell him because I don't know what that problem would have, I don't know how that problem would have been resolved.
Did that eat you up inside? Did you have an outlet with other black friends that you're able to talk about this with, or white friends? Were you able to talk about it with your dudes?
Yeah, I did. I told my best friend, he's still my best friend today. He knew, his mother knew. I asked his mother not to tell my parents
Hmm.
because, and when I say
Yeah.
afraid in the moment, but not afraid later. I would still move up and down the street.
Right.
I was like, F Mr. Quinn. I would throw his newspaper behind the bushes. You
Yeah,
know what
you
I'm
get it.
saying? Like he would have to look for his newspaper. I wasn't kind and gentle about it. So in no way was I passive. But when you are, staring at a shotgun, I'm not looking down the barrel, but when I'm staring at a shotgun, big corn-fed dude, like
Mm.
fingers twice the size of mine
Yeah.
type. Yeah, I'm afraid in that moment. But after that, I was like, you know what?
But
It's not a big deal, but I just knew that I had to handle it. And even to this day, Adam, I will tell you, there were moments where I would get up and run. I don't use Facebook as much as I used to, but there were
mm,
moments where if I got up at 2 a.m, I would run 2 miles. If I got up at 3 a.m, I would go run 3 miles. This is no exaggeration. There's a particular route in my last community, not this one, but there was a person who owned a vehicle, had a Confederate flag on the
mhm.
vehicle, had a Confederate flag in the yard. Every single time I ran past that house, I always had my guard up.
Yeah.
I would turn my
It's-
music down.
Yep. You don't draw attention.
Eyes are open. I'm paying attention because it was the signal of that flag. I didn't know what that family would do, especially at 2, 3, 4 in the morning.
Right. They see a
So
black guy running
trust
down the
me,
street at 3 a.m. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't operate with a whole lot of fear, but I am much more aware as a result of Mr. Quinn opening my
How did
eyes them years ago.
in the house, right? Like how did your parents, how did they bring you up the right way to be, loving of all people? What was it like at home?
I will say that again, I felt like my parents worked very hard. I think my father, a lot of families will say that, their parents told them that they had to be twice as good. My parents never told me that I had to be twice as good. That wasn't a phrase. That wasn't a recommendation. That wasn't a prescription that was given in my household. But what my father did tell me was that it may not be easy, and that is no excuse for you to not do what's
I like
necessary.
that.
It hard, then you need to figure out how to get around that. And so whether or not, so I'll give you an example. My father would go to Sears, and in the break room, he would put a sign up that said, "My son will cut your yard for $7, no matter where you are in the city." And in a car, you could get from one side of
Right.
Davenport, Iowa to the other side in 15 or 20 minutes. Wasn't far. But on a
Hiker walking though.
bicycle with a laundry line strapped around your stomach, tied to the handles of a lawnmower, and I'm dragging a
Jeez.
lawnmower on my 10 speed because my father's got people all over the city wanting me to cut their
He's
grass for
putting you to
$7.
work, man.
$7, man. So when you ask how was it, my parents, we had chores.
Hmm.
We went to church on Sunday. I played the drums when I was in junior high school in church. I mean, just to me, a normal family. I don't know it to be any other way. Yes, my best friend, he grew up in a single mother household, but I didn't see that as being drastically different than
Right.
the fact that I had both of my parents. I think I'm an individual, even today, I'm an individual that takes people at face value. I'm not. I try not to be judgmental. I didn't know. Again, I didn't know that word then, but he was my best friend. His mom made the best tacos on Friday before we went to the football game. I knew that I had parents that loved me. I knew that I had a lot of people in church that would allow me to come over to their home, spend the night, different things. It was a normal, to me, it was a normal childhood, which contributes to why I'm able to move the way that I move now. I can vibe with a person like you yelling across the room, when are you going to be on the pod? Yo, whenever you want to do it. I
That's
love
how,
that. You know what I'm
that's how
saying?
we
I don't
that's
I
how we
don't
do.
have all of
But
these pretensions and reservations
you
because
don't stand up
my
for
parents
maladies.
just simply said, people are people and we're gonna love them as much as we possibly can.
Do you, if you're looking back on it now in your in your teens, in your early 20s, were you somebody, and still now, who stands up for the underdog, who looks out for the little guy, stands up to bullies, always looking to do the right thing? Was that something that was always ingrained in you? I mean, you mentioned before the rebellious side, but I feel like the values, right? Like, we all have it. That's part of growing up. Believe me, I was an asshole. I went through my shit when I was in my teens and everything. But the way we're brought up to recognize wrong from right, those are the values that are ingrained. Those are etched. I call them like my internal 10 commandments, right? Those are etched in me from my parents and my upbringing. Like, was that something always top of mind for you, who you are?
Yeah, I honestly I can't say that, Adam. I just don't know that I was really in a lot of situations when, like, I was a cool dude in high school, junior high school. I
I mean,
wasn't
I
class
wouldn't
king
expect
or
anything
any of that
else.
stuff, but yo, I was cool. Like, everybody loved Torin Ellis. I mean, my friends were far and wide.
Mhm.
We grew up with 4 different cities. It's a place on the map for those that are listening called the Quad Cities.
Yeah.
So you had Davenport, Iowa, Moline, Illinois, East Moline, and Rock Island. There were bridges that connected us. I had friends in all of those cities. Like, so I wasn't really in the experience or in relationship with the underdog, so to
Mhm.
speak. I think that probably started to form in my life well into my 20s. When I'm working inside of corporate America for the 4 years that I was there, only 4 years. But when I would see individuals being taken advantage of, or when I worked for
Let's
the railroad, when I got out of the military, I worked for the railroad. When I saw people taken advantage of, that's when that mechanism started to grow in me and my character. When I had a supervisor, the only blue collar job that I've ever had, where I had an on the job accident. I had a lid blow up in my face,
Oof.
Adam. It knocked my teeth out, broke my nose, split the bone right here. I
Fuck.
fell back 30 feet, landed on a catwalk. If I would have missed that
Jeez.
catwalk, I would have gone down another 80 feet
Yeah.
unconscious.
Bad news.
So when I tell you that I don't take a lot of bullshit, it's because when I worked for that particular company, I had to do the supervisor, Torin, why are you out here acting like Martin Luther King? If I tell people to go to lunch for 10 minutes, then I want them to take a 10-minute lunch break. And I said, Mark, I don't know who you think you are, but if the lunch break is 30 minutes, I'm taking 30 minutes and I'm telling everybody else to take 30 minutes. So it was those types of reactions where, or instances where I started to find myself advocating for the voiceless, if you will, those individuals who
That's
felt less empowered. It was well in my 20s when that started.
activist-like efforts. It's in your bio here. Activist-like efforts. What does that mean?
Yeah, I'm
Active.
advocating, man.
Yeah.
I approach high powered, high performance team building through the lens of an activist. Like, I want to get that frequency moving. I want to bring a lot of people to the equation. I want work to be better for everybody. Like, I care about the organization. I know that the bottom line is important, but just because the bottom line is important to the leaders, to shareholders, it does not mean in any way that work has to suck for everybody else. It does
Right.
not in any way mean that we should subscribe to things that are less than. I don't believe in that. So
Right.
when I say I show up, I don't show up with necessarily the Queen's English. I don't always show up referring to academic research and data to support this particular thing right here. Listen, I get it. Everybody has a different way of showing up, but I'm showing up as Torin. And Adam, for the
How you show up.
longest, it was hard for me to do that because I always felt like there was something that I needed to pretend. I had people who told me that they couldn't trust me because I had hair on my face. I had literally a leader,
I've never heard that.
Adam, if you If you were to put a poll up on Twitter, I swear, and you ask your black and brown friends, colleagues,
Right.
professionals, what are one of the reasons why you don't wear facial hair? I'm telling you, overwhelmingly, you
Is
are
it
going to hear them say, because it's not accepted in the workplace. I had a
interesting?
man, white man, tell me, I don't trust you because you have
That's
hair
crazy.
on your face. And
The-
this is what's killer. I had the number one team in the building.
yeah, be like, what don't you trust? My numbers? Dude, what don't you trust? My results? You don't
So
trust my performance?
that's right. So
You don't trust my receipts?
it's because of these instances that as an entrepreneur, I am less trying to be I pretend far less than, let's just say, than I used to.
I don't got time for that. It takes so much more effort, and I say this all the time, to pretend to be something you're not than be who you really are. It takes
Absolutely.
so much more effort. And once I had a couple of self-awareness epiphanies in my life, and once I got to those points of being comfortable with who I am, that's when things opened up. And when I started doing this show and I was able to have a platform to really say how I feel and feel what I mean and say what I mean, that's when things change you. So I want to pivot. I want to get into the crux. I want to get into the good stuff here. And whenever I talk to practitioners in the DEIB space, I always ask them if you could define each one of the letters for us and what it means to you in your practice. Let's start there.
Um all right.
Let's break it down. I haven't done this in a while. I haven't had a practitioner on in about 50, 60 episodes. So I think it's time for a refresher here in 2024 with Torin Ellis to break down DEI and B.
Okay, so I'm going to actually steal a definition for the letter D from Miriam Lewis, who is the Chief Diversity Officer at Principal Financial.
Mm-hmm.
Their definition of diversity is all that I am, and more importantly, all that I am not. I'll say it again, all that I am, and more importantly, all that I am not. Inclusion is us being in the same room, the same space, the same organization, the same line, same warehouse. Equity is I might need some different resources in order for me to do the job that I have been hired to do. It doesn't mean that you are lowering the bar, but I may need some different accommodations. I'll give you an example. As a single mother who has children, needs to catch public transportation in order to get to work,
Right.
a schedule of 7 in the morning may be a little bit challenging. Maybe her schedule needs to be 8 in the morning. Everyone else on the team is going to show up at 7, but she may need to show up at 8, and she'll work that extra hour because public transportation
Exactly.
will support her in the evening. So equity is not about lowering the bar. It's about how do we make sure that we give people the resources and the support that they need to excel in the job that we have hired them for. And then the belonging piece is really making Adam and Torin feel like they are welcomed in this room. It's one thing for us to sit at a conference. It's one thing for us to sit in a break room in the facility, but it's something else to feel like we belong. I actually said it in the beginning of the pod. I never felt like I was growing up in a place where I didn't belong. I was unwanted. The belonging is making you feel wanted. Those are the letters, DEIB. Let me give you my definition: bringing the unusual, the unfamiliar, and the unsuspecting together, unafraid that we cannot hit our KPI goals and objectives.
I dig it. Whenever I talk about DI and B with my clients too, when we talk about diversity, I always say to them, how important is it to you diversity of mindset? I like to remove like bias. I find so many organizations, and we're not just talking about outward appearance, but they want a lot of yes men and women and people in their organization. How important to you is it that you have different perspectives, different mindsets within your organization? And of course, they're going to say yes. No, 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 no. We don't want that. We don't want that at all. But when you come into an organization, how do you assess if they're just checking the box in DEIB, or if they really freaking want to make changes and want to make inroads and be a truly diverse organization. How do you, because that, I could see that being a little bit tricky, right? Like if someone's hiring Torin to come in, you're going to tell them the real deal, whether they like it or not. But there's got to be some nuances to that approach. How do you, what's the assessment look like?
Okay, so there's a little bit there. So I'll do everything that I can to keep
There's a
the
lot
answer
there.
tight. But let me address the first piece in terms of how important it is for the difference in mindset. I believe it's extremely important. Oftentimes when we talk about diversity, we defer to the race and the gender piece because they are easy, they're observable, they're immutable, if you will. They are there, and so it's easy for us to talk about them. And then there are probably another 7 or 8 characteristics, if you will, that readily come to mind. We look at academic accomplishment, we look at an individual's zip code or their geography, we look at their ability, disability, if you will, and there are some others that tend to be the usual secondary layer of dimension that people are looking for. To your point, or to your question, I think it's imperative that we are exploring the variety, the disparity, and the separation in terms of dimensions. When I talk about variety, I'm talking about acumen and experience. When I talk about disparity, I'm talking about people's beliefs and associations. When I'm talking about separation, I'm talking about their compensation and their role and how they've grown, if you will, over their career. So I believe personally that these dimensions of variety, separation, and disparity are extremely important because all of them lean
Agree.
towards what a person brings from a creative standpoint and intellectual standpoint to an organization. Now, put that aside. You
Well
asked,
said.
what's the assessment look like? I mean, to me, it's simple. We do it in our sleep because we've been doing it for so long. Adam, it is important that when you are looking at an organization and you are trying to solve for D&I, that you are checking D&I at every value point in the organization. We get the thing wrong because we do one of two things. Number one, we will say if we stand up some unconscious bias training or some schedule of training that we've done diversity and inclusion. We kind of clap our hands and we're happy about it. Or we say if we can recruit more underrepresented individuals, people that are not in our organization, that we've solved for diversity because we've done the recruiting thing. We need both of them. We need the learning and development. We need the talent acquisition, but we also need diversity and inclusion to be explored for in supplier diversity, in corporate social responsibility, in philanthropic efforts,
Amen.
in
Right.
our board governance, in our accounting practices, policy and procedures. I mean, I can keep going. It's all of the value points where we need to make sure that D&I, for short, D&I is showing up in a way that is modeled and substantive and consistent and accountable across the organization. Absent of that, then all you are doing in many ways is checking the box.
Exactly. And I find it interesting because I'm an in the trenches recruiter. I'm an in the trenches external recruiter. Companies hire me to source and find the best talent. And in my 8 years of doing recruiting, more than a handful of times, I've had conversations with hiring teams and they say, Adam, we want to ensure a diverse hire. And I'm like, well, what exactly are you saying to that? I'm like, what does that mean? Right? Do you want me to source people of color? What do you want from me to source? And they say, Adam, we just want to make sure that you're sourcing a diverse group of candidates. And I could kind of read between the lines here. So this is what I ask them. At the final stages, if I have a black, brown, yellow, anything but white candidate and a white candidate, and the white candidate is better, who are you going to hire? Who are you going to hire? And I want to hear that answer from them because that's going to help me position and understand that, right? And 9 out of 10 times, I think only once they say, we want to hire the best possible candidate. We want to ensure that your sourcing efforts are diverse. We want to make sure that you, as a recruiter, are looking everywhere, not just on LinkedIn. Maybe someone doesn't have access to LinkedIn. Maybe someone doesn't have access to LinkedIn Premium and their profile is coming to the top of your page. So how are you doing that? How are you ensuring diversity? And that's always a tough one for me as a recruiter. And I really take a lot of pride in that. So where are we right now? Like
I
where?
want to turn the table though, Adam.
Please
I want to turn on that, man.
go for it.
I know
Please
it's your pod,
go for
but
it.
I want to stay there for. Let's double
Let's get
click on
into
that.
it.
So, what's the issue with your position? I don't see an issue in your position. If I have a black and white candidate, and the white candidate is better, we
You
all things equal. I don't see any issue in that.
the, the
Do people that you talk to have an issue with that?
No, the problem I get, man, is because I'm trying to read between the lines, and I think they're just giving me lip service. I think they want me to bring in more diverse candidates, and they're going to hire somebody diverse who may not be as good as somebody who's not diverse. And I've seen that happen too, and that's when I get pushed back to from other candidates, and it's been a weird. It's only happened a couple of times, thankfully, in my world. While
So I'm gonna
so
hit
my
this.
question is,
I'm gonna hit it a little differently.
so my,
differently.
my question is, are companies going about it the wrong way and flipping it where it's almost reversed?
Yeah, I
Like
can't
straight
speak
talk.
for companies.
And I'm not naming
And,
and shaming anybody, believe me.
no, I get it. I get it. No, let me just say this. Let me hit this in a different way. And I've had this conversation a number of times. First and foremost, D&I is not about lowering the bar. So I wouldn't consult or advise or any of my clients to bring on an individual who was less than superior. I
That's
just
not
use
going to
the
help
word
any
superior.
organization.
Yeah, whether it's superior, average, higher, whatever that last word is, I don't advocate for anyone lowering the bar ever. Never have I done that. That's number one. But I hit this a little bit differently. Um, Person said to me, this was on a session with one of my clients. Torin, we have 5 candidates, and the client wants diversity, and I'm struggling because I feel like it's reverse discrimination. All they said was 5 candidates, client wants diversity, and they feel like it's reverse discrimination. I said, let me take that and go a different way. You got 5 candidates, all of them are white. You can only present 2. What do you tell the other 3? And they said, well, we just tell them that they didn't make the cut. I said, exactly. That's exactly what you tell them. You didn't tell them they didn't make the cut because they were white.
Yeah, no one's saying that.
You didn't tell them they didn't make the cut because they didn't have an ability or they didn't come from the LGBTQ community.
Mhm.
You tell them you didn't make the cut because I put forth the 2 best candidates.
Exactly. Yeah, true.
And they were like, I get it. So
Not that
here's the
difficult.
flip side of that. I don't want a person or an organization to just simply check the box, Adam. What I want them to do is, if there is a lack of representation, I want to be more intentional in my search and sourcing efforts.
Exactly.
That is it. I am not going to defer to what has been easy, what has been on automatic drip. I am going to focus on building new relationships. I'm going to look at new collaboration partners. I'm going to spend
New
an
sourcing
inordinate
channels.
amount of time in new ponds to fish for new quality candidates that support the intentionality
That's the right
of
analogy.
inclusion.
That's the right analogy, is changing up what you've been doing and look in different sources. That's it. So let's bring it back to the calendar here. I want to bring it back to the year 2001. The internet bubble bursting, man. What was Torin doing at that time?
Trying to stave off bankruptcy. When that bubble burst, Adam, all of my clients, at that point, I'm running a 7-figure external agency like you. I've
Mhm.
never been an internal recruiter, by the way. And I'm trying to stave off, my telecom clients dropping like flies, like
Yeah, the
just
bubble was
dropping like
bursting,
flies.
literally. Companies were going belly up.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in my attempt to stave off bankruptcy, I was able to hold it off for, a year and a half, 2 years. And in 2004, I ended up filing bankruptcy. I had a client that owed me a couple of clients that owed me a little more than 500,000 because all I did was kept sourcing and putting people in play. I didn't know any better. I didn't know that I could go get an attorney. I didn't know that I could try to get on their bankruptcy schedule, and get some degree of payment remittance. I didn't know these things. It was my first business, first time
You didn't know.
entrepreneur. All I said was, all right, forget it. If T. Ellis and Company doesn't want to pay T. Ellis, then let me just go find a new contract, somebody who's hiring. And there were clients out there that were hiring, but they just weren't paying. And finally in 2004, it caught up with me.
What did that feel like to go belly up? Did you
Frustrating, man.
how did you feel? Did you feel like a failure?
Listen,
Well,
did I? You come on, bankruptcy, losing a house or forced to sell
yeah.
a home that we loved. It was a painful experience. One that I would not wish upon anybody. I would say to people, I used to tell people there wasn't enough love, lust, or liquor to keep me from being a functional alcoholic. I felt like I was a functional alcoholic in 04, 05, 06, trying to deal with the pain of losing a business, going from being wildly successful to, laying on my back. I mean, literally losing it all. So it was a really, really frustrating experience. But here's the thing. 2001 was not, I'm sorry, 2008 was worse than 2001.
2008 was brutal.
And I sailed through 2008 because of the experience of 2001. Because of what I experienced in 01, I was able to see the signs, the markers. I knew the economy was moving in a totally different and worse direction that I was able to navigate. In 01, all of my clients were telecom clients. In 08, I had a mix of clients. So
you learned to diversify the client base.
Didn't hit me the same.
Yeah, you learn from it. So what was that? What was the, listen, I didn't coin this. I don't own this. I say this all the time, man. Two things. One, the treasure is in your shit pits. The treasure is in the shit pit. The treasure is when you're at your lowest. Everyone knows my story. When I got fired 15 years ago, got fired by Gary Vee, yada, yada. When I was at that lowest, when I was in between jobs before I pivoted into recruiting, that was rock bottom, man. That was my rock bottom. My daughter had a terrible accident. She had 3rd-degree burns. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know my value. I didn't know how I was going to provide for my family. I didn't know what was next for me. And I could look back on it now, 8-9 years later, and say, you know what? Rock bottom is the strongest foundation to build upon. You need that foundation, right? You need to start from zero. And you don't think about it. No one wants to do that. But when you have that foundation and you build up, everything else on top, man, it's got a solid base. So how did you build back up after that bankruptcy? How did you get yourself back on your feet? Did you clean up? Did you cut alcohol? How did you ensure the family was tight? How did Torin get back to being Torin?
Yeah, I mean, it took a lot of centering. It took a lot of music and nonstop playlists. It took a lot of self-examination, recognizing that, you can wing this thing of entrepreneurship. But at some degree, while it may not be a formal education, there is some degree of learning and continued learning that needs to take place. And so, part of what I did was to take classes. I took some college classes and just said, I don't want this right here to happen to me again. I took some self-development courses around motivation, leadership, inspiration, because I needed to make sure that I was whole. And here's what I learned, Adam, in that period. I learned that I was better than I had given myself credit for.
That's a big one.
I was better than what I had given myself credit for.
Were you hating on yourself?
So, say it again.
A lot of self-hate, self-doubt.
Oh, absolutely. That imposter. That's why I said, in the beginning, that showing up, pretending like I had to be somebody different. I needed to recognize that I just simply needed to show up. People jive. They connected with me. I was an incredible salesperson. My candidates they always knew that they were primary for me. They were my first recruiting business was illusory. The word illusory is imagination. That was the first recruiting business. My second recruiting business was Second Motive. And candidates would ask me, well, why is your business named Second Motive? I said, because my primary motive is to get you what you want. My second motive is to make sure when I spend that money, I don't have to return it.
Mm-hmm. When I'm not waiting for no guarantee. So when did you get out of the recruiting business? Because I'm thinking
11.
about the same thing myself, man.
Yeah. I got out like 10 or 11. I still do search assignments even today, but from a formal
Ex-
full-time
Executive search
capacity,
capacity.
yeah, 2010, 11.
Man, it's a different world. So you've shifted. You've shifted the business. You talk about,
Had to.
let's talk about your practice for a little bit, right? Driven entirely by internal dynamics that center an organization, people, analytical, efficient, and precise. Sorry, methodological and precise. Like, who's your best client? What's your ICP, man? Like, who works best with you? Who do you work best with?
Um, I've had the fortune of working with some of the biggest logos on the planet. And I will tell you that my best client is one that is committed. And here's what commitment looks like to me. Number one, there is an executive and or an executive team that has made a declarative statement that diversity and inclusion are important to the organization. That statement is internal facing to every single employee, 20, 200, 2,000, 200,000. Every employee knows that leader believes in D&I. Maybe that statement is external facing, but at minimum internal. That's number one. Number two, that leader is willing to reallocate resources.
That's a
That
big
would
one.
be headcount and dollars.
That's a big one.
That's
Put
absolutely
your money
a
where
big
your
one.
mouth is.
Put your money where your mouth is. And then number three, that they are going to hold their senior leadership, mid-level managers accountable. If I can find an organization that is willing to subscribe to those three tenants, then I know that they are an ICP for me.
Mm.
Because no matter what happens, they are willing to go down the journey, the road to get to the result that we believe is available to us, present and or waiting for us. And so that to me is the ICP. I don't care if they're a small firm, medium size, large. I need those three things. And let me tell you why I need those three things.
Please.
I need those three because I worked with a large retailer in 2016 and in 2017. And in both years, Adam, they never took my findings and pushed them up to the CHRO or the C suite. So nobody outside of this immediate reach of mine
Right.
saw the work that we did. We uncovered challenges and
Were
problems
they
that we
scared?
put on their radar.
Were they
Here's
scared
what
for their
happened.
jobs, man? They're
Here's
like,
what happened.
shit, we're not doing so good. I don't know if I want to push this up, and my ass is on the line now.
So check this out.
Yeah.
In 2018, this is public. In 2018, the CEO had announced that they were going to step down. The next CEO would have been a black man. The black man that would have been elevated to CEO stepped down along with 30, 35 or so other men because there was a major bro culture that was being uncovered and talked about. And it resulted in the departure of 30 to 40 high level
Wow.
leaders to include this black man that would have become the CEO. So it was after that moment that I said, wait a minute, why am I doing D&I work and my work is not being seen by the highest levels of leadership in the organization? So no longer am I taking these crumbs. I am working with organizations that really want to commit to doing the work that we are prescribing.
I love it. Yeah, that's powerful. So you talk about leadership and this quote timeless language of leadership. There's threat. Listen, I talk to so many leaders on this show. I've been doing this a long time, and there's these traits that come through, and there's these characteristics, and I think that leadership transcends time from a values perspective. I think styles have changed. I think
Sure.
more leaders these days are listening.
Hope so.
I hope so. I hope so. Yeah, I really hope so. What are you seeing out there? The good, the bad, and the ugly around leadership. Let's spend a few minutes on leadership here because I think that it's obviously critical, and I also think that there's a lot of young organizations coming out there, these startups, and so with young folks leading them, that two things. One, they don't have the leadership experience, but some of them might have those innate built in their DNA. And how do you bring that out to make them great leaders early on?
Yeah. So let me do the good.
Yeah.
The good of leadership to me is an individual who's willing to develop you, Adam, to
Mm-hmm.
inspire you, to resource you, and to support you. I believe that if I'm the person that you report to, we have the most interaction on a day to day basis. I have an obligation to develop, inspire, resource, and support you. How I do that is going to look different, a bit more nuanced, depending on the geography, depending on the industry, depending on my acumen, depending on a whole lot of factors. But in the end, to me, it comes down to development, inspiration, resource, and support. That's what good leadership to me looks like. It doesn't matter what business book you read. I think that it all gets distilled into one of those four categories. I think bad leadership, or where we are problematic, is, to your point, they're not willing to listen. They haven't done the work to
Mm-hmm.
build the trust. They're not willing to model what it looks like to be inclusive and equitable. And so when you have a person who divorces themselves from these four good principles on this side, I feel like you always have a tension filled relationship, which it doesn't have to be. I don't think we need a whole bunch of bells and whistles. And this is not me suggesting that we don't invest in technology or that we don't explore better ways of putting our benefits and whatnot together, or that we're not exploring compensation and pay equity. I'm not suggesting that. What I'm saying is, I just don't believe that good relationships of leadership require a whole bunch
No.
of bells and whistles. It really is the human dynamic, that human spirit. As long as I care about you, then I'm going to treat you in a way that supports and suggests that I care about you. Period.
Do you think we're overusing the word empathy? Has it lost its touch? Do you think it's become a buzzword in
No,
leadership?
I don't believe it is. I actually don't believe that we're empathetic enough. In my D&I work, my practice, and this is, I stand on it, I feel like if you're going to do diversity and inclusion the right way, if you're going to be a better leader, you'll be more empathetic, you'll be more intentional, you'll have more proximity to the people on your team, in your business unit or your department, and that you will be transparent with them. And transparent sometimes is vulnerable. But I believe that you will ebb and flow through those four
Mm-hmm.
words. That's what good leadership looks like. I want to know that your mother or your father, these two parents that you say are retired, I want to have a relationship with you, Adam, that says, you know what? He's comfortable coming to me to share with me that his productivity has taken a dip because his focus hasn't been there, because he's caring for his
Right.
parents. This shit is new to him. It's a little hard. I don't really know what I'm doing. Yes, it's affected my productivity. It's not that I'm checking out. It's not that you're a bad leader, Torin. I got some shit going on, and I want you to be willing to share, comfortable sharing that with me.
And how, as a leader, could I best support you during this time? That's
Go.
the payoff.
There you go.
Yeah, there it is too. When you're coaching senior leadership, I want to talk a little bit about hiring too, because we're in an incredibly difficult market right now. We're in an overly saturated market. There's a ton of layoffs happening out there, and unfortunately, fortunately, depending on your perspective on it, companies are now in a position where they could choose a cream of the crop. They could really, find the best qualified folks for the team, but there's a balance between the hard skills and the soft skills. And I always talk to senior leaders and I say, listen, by the time someone gets to you in an interview process, they've met the qualifications and experience. But how do you assess character and values without that like bias, without looking for somebody who is going to be exactly like you? I hate the word culture fit. Listen, I stood up on the stage of RecFest UK and I did a whole thing on I hate the F word. I hate the word culture fit because to me that lends to bias. When you're coaching leadership in the interview process, what are some of those methods and tips and tricks? Not even tricks, because that's a terrible word, but what are those methods to understand and ask someone about who they are from a core value perspective? I also don't like when people ask, "Oh, tell me what you do outside of work," because it could be complete bias. I could tell you, "Hey, I like to crochet Confederate flags, but I don't want you to hold that against me," right? Like, if that's my passion, but I'm great at what I like, how do you get to that?
Adam, that's really tricky, and I don't know if I have a really
Just your
intelligent
thoughts,
response.
just off the
Yeah,
cuff,
yeah,
man.
yeah. I mean, again, it's tricky. I feel like it's just more important for us to be consistent in that interviewing process. And so, if in fact you are going to ask that question that you despise, that you ask that question of every single candidate. That
Consistently.
you are not only asking that question of the people who graduated from schools that you
Yeah.
like or subscribe to, or that people are coming from companies with logos that you recognize and deem to be a bit more superior. You ask that disposable question of every single individual. At least you can go back and say that I was consistent and that I was fair in the interviewing process. How I judge that response, that is the tricky part.
Mm,
That's the nuance. That's the reason why you would have an interview panel, if you will.
well,
That's the reason
panels
why you
help.
would have some of that creative, those different dimensions of intellect that you asked about 30 or 40 minutes ago.
Mhm.
That needs to be in the room to
Critical.
help contribute and maybe offset the bias that may creep up.
Yeah, it's all about, you know, preventing and we all have unconscious bias.
Indeed.
Every single one of us, there's something that we were predisposed to because no one is 100%. I love everybody. Everyone's perfect. We've all had life experiences. We've all grown up in
Sure.
different ways. We're all different, inside, outside, and it's just human nature. There's conflict. There's dislike. There's just biases, and to different degrees and extremes. And we also have to understand. For me, it's knowing what my biases are. And I've talked about this before. Early on in recruiting, I did this one exercise where I found that certain foreign sounding names I was less inclined to source from. And I worked on that bias, and it was something inside, and it wasn't racist per se, but it was uncomfortable and unknown. And that's why I strayed away from that. And then I was able to course correct and be more open and mindful about what my biases are. So we're approaching the final stretch here, as I like to say. What are you working on these days? What's exciting you? What's keeping the juices flowing? What's keeping the money coming in? What are you working on right now?
There's two things that are my North Star right now.
Oh, don't you got to stay with the
You
North
know,
Star? That's my last question, man. You can't go North
okay,
Star.
don't worry. So
That's my
the
money
few
shot, man.
that's cool. That's cool. The fuel, the juice that you ask about, it's coming from two areas. Number one, my creative side.
Yeah.
I can coach, I consult, I speak. I can do that in my sleep.
Hmm.
It's the creative side that has not been fed over the last decade or so, and so I personally would like to see myself creating in-flight movie content. I'd like to see
Ooh.
myself creating more content around humanity. If anybody Googles the phrase, the ROI of D&I is greater humanity, that's mine. That's me. I haven't trademarked it, but I'm the person who says that. I believe D&I is greater humanity. So I am fueling my creative pursuits. The second thing that is getting the juices really flowing for me is I want to create some HR tech. I want to create a solution that I deem as business intelligence. I've talked to some folks and they see it as a manager enablement
Mm.
solution, but I want to play in the space of building technology that approaches the D&I conversation differently, that it proves out some of the work that management consulting firms have been purporting over the years. I just don't believe that there's a solution that shows us that more diverse companies are better for the bottom line. I don't know if there's a piece of technology that does it. I want to build it.
How do you see AI playing a role in that?
I mean, if I'm looking at going back to that
From a
example that I gave you a moment ago around Adam's productivity falling off because of his parents, how can I use AI to make Torin a better, more sensitive,
Mm.
more informed leader? So that I'm not getting down on Adam, that I'm not penalizing him in our one-on-ones, but that I am intelligently being empathetic and educating myself on how I can support him in that process. So I don't believe an organization's learning and development library is going to be comprehensive at any given moment. What I believe is that their learning and development library has the ability, it's going to be necessary that it evolves real time. And so AI can give me that solution that helps me
Yeah.
support Adam better.
Yeah, and I see it working into the solution that you're building now as creating a using your own custom GPT as a warehouse of knowledge and data that you could pull from, for examples,
Absolutely.
for data, for past performance. And I think that using it the right way and ethically and understanding what the boundaries are of how to use it. But we're in such an early stage of AI, man. I mean, listen, AI, MML, that's been around for a long time. Same thing as the internet. It's been around since the 50s, right? Right. Like these things have been around for a long time. We're just learning how to use them in the practical consumer and the business sense right now. It's exciting. Torin, what's keeping you up at night these days?
The departure, the divorce, the discourse, the disingenuousness around D&I.
Mm,
When I think about the reason why so many organizations decided that they wanted to be committed to this journey, the reason that they did that and made those statements years ago was on the death of a black man. It is so offensive as a black man to hear people on stages, on podcasts, in LinkedIn posts and others to say that we started our D&I journey as a result of the death of George Floyd. That is offensive. And then it's even more offensive to hear that some of these same leaders, individuals, people who have put out posts are divorcing themselves. They are deterring themselves from being committed to humanity. That keeps me up at night.
that's just that's just bad mojo, man. That's karma. That's bad. Like doing something just because something you should have been doing it before.
But it's rampant.
Yeah.
And while it may not be as big as my word or use of rampant suggests, it is far bigger than
Mm.
we think. And it's not just happening here in the US, it's happening in the UK. There was a prime minister in the UK just in the month of May who made an announcement and said you can't do D&I. They put forth legislation that you can't do D&I meetings on work time. You had to do diversity and inclusion related corporate meetings either at lunch or after work. So that's just
And
disingenuous.
we're
And it's a problem that we need to
Yeah,
address.
I mean, listen, I could stand on my soapbox. We're in a very scary time. Hate is prevalent. Hate,
It is.
hate on all sides. Islamophobia, anti-Semitism. The world is being divided more than ever. It is scary. It is scary for me as a Jewish man raising Jewish kids in the burbs here to see what's happening, to see friends and family all over the world, to see innocent folks getting killed. Like the world is getting more divided. And how do we keep the workplace safe? How do we keep the workplace a safe space for everyone? Right? Like how do we ensure that? It's scary, man. These are shitty times.
Well, I mean, but they are because too many people have been silent and continue to be silent in the face of injustice.
Exactly.
And so it's a matter of
Speaking
our
up.
speaking up in our workplace, in our community, at our family dinner table when we have holiday gatherings and those weekend, weather is getting nice and you're bringing people over. It is mandatory that more people are speaking up in the face of
And
injustice.
in the breadth of the work that you do, having a workplace where you're not going to shun people if they're being activists within their rights on either side. If you're pro-Palestinian and if you're pro-peace and you're not being hateful, the same thing on the other sides, right? Like as long as your companies are not holding that against you, unless you cross a line, right, in violence and hate and certain things. But companies need to be mindful and support people for who they are outside of work too, to an extent. It's
Adam, I
it's
love you for what
it's
you just
delicate,
did.
right? It's delicate. It's nuanced. This is not we don't have this playbook right now.
I love you for what you just did. And I don't know if you know you did it, but you said 45 seconds ago, growing up in the burbs, Jewish, and then you just said it's okay to be pro-Palestinian and peace. And you didn't water that
No.
or mix that with anything else. I love what you just did. And so I often start my presentations when I walk into a room with this quote: what is needed is a shift in openness and value given to the narrative by both the storyteller and the listener.
And with that, let's bring it home here. Torin Ellis, what is the single greatest piece of advice you've ever received that you take action on every day? A mantra, something you wake up first thing in the morning, you say in your head, first thing you goes through your mind, gets you focused, locked in for the day?
I don't know if it's the first thing, but
Maybe
what
second.
I will say is P minus I equals R. Potential minus interference equals results. I try to move through my day limiting the interference, the naysayers, the individuals who say we can't do D&I, the people who say D&I is lowering the bar and it's reverse racism, and these I try to limit the interference and focus on the result. And the result that I am chasing is greater humanity.
I love it.
P minus I equals R.
And my spin on that I practice is plan your work and work your plan. That's my mantra. Kind of a little spin on that too. And I love it, man. This has been a great conversation. We could go on for hours here. And maybe we'll get a part 2 scheduled later this year. And maybe we'll do it live. Maybe we'll do it live at a Rec Fest. Maybe we'll do it live at a Sherm or something fun coming down the pipe there. But Torin Ellis, last but not least, you look back on your life. You look on those tough times when you really had to dig down deep and harness that inner tenacity. When you were at the bottom of bankruptcy, when you were lying on your back, putting down that booze and being your worst self, and you needed to reach back up. You need to claw back and harness that inner tenacity to pull you forward. And you sit here today, grateful for your life, your family, your practice, the work that you do, the change for good that you are in this world. What is your beacon? What is your compass? Torin Ellis, what is your North Star in life?
Bad will be the day for any man when he becomes absolutely contented with the thoughts that he is thinking, with the deeds that he is doing, with the life that he is living, when forever beating at his soul is some great desire to do something more, to be more, to give more, because after all, I and you and everyone listening are a child of the Most High God. And I just remember, no matter where I am, there is a reason for me to be in the scenario or the situation that I'm in, and that I must go through whatever it is to continue to live out my purpose.
Amen to that, man. I love that. That is some powerful, powerful stuff there. So, Torin, I want to thank you for your time, your energy, your wisdom, your strong words, your experience, sharing with me and my audience. Everyone, check him out. He's on LinkedIn. He's everywhere. He's going to be out in RecFest UK. I'm still trying to get myself out there. I'm trying to still get out to RecFest UK. I was out there in Nebworth a couple of years ago. I had a blast. But Torin's going to be out there doing a 36-hour D&I intensive. What are you doing out there? Aside from wrecking the fest that we know is RecFest. What a party that is. Jeez, what an event.
Indeed. Yeah, we're going to do a D&I intensive here in Baltimore, June 26th and 27th. So anybody who's interested in being better about D&I, get at me on LinkedIn, as they would say. Shoot me an email, torin@torinellis.com. We're going to also do a one-day intensive in London the week of RecFest there. I'm going to do that on Tuesday, July 9th in London. So it's an event for individuals who really lead D&I work, practice in their organization, or they want to be better about doing the work, more intentional. So find me on social media at Torin Ellis, once again, across all of social media at Torin Ellis.
Find them. Torin, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. This has been incredible. Everyone out there listening, if this show resonated with you, leave a review rating. It goes a long way. You know how to find out more at thepodcast.com. Follow us on Instagram at NHP Talent. Listen, sharing means caring. Please spread the word. I appreciate it. Leave a review rating. It goes a long way. Be good to yourself. Be better to others. And catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast. Take care, everybody. Torin Ellis. Thank you. Hey everybody, I want to talk about a product and platform that I absolutely love and our latest sponsor, Interseller, the prospecting and outreach platform of choice for recruiters and sellers. Whether you're doubling down on business development or recruiting talent, Interseller does all the heavy lifting of finding contact data, automating the email and follow-up process, and syncs all that rich data into 20 plus CRM and ATS platforms. Reach out now and get going on a 2-week free trial and let them know you heard about it from Adam on the podcast today. Check out the link on the website. Appreciate it.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search the podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.